Holden Made.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Holden Made Podcast. I'm Jeremy Holden, your host for the Holden Made Podcast. This is a podcast about creativity, about creative processes, and anything else that piques my interest. I look forward to interviewing people about their careers, about their creativity, and about their lives in general. For this episode of the Holden Made Podcast, we welcome Cleo DeOrio, a choreographer, director, and arts administrator. She was kind enough to share with us about her career and her creative process. Now let's dive in and see what we can learn today.
Well, hello, everyone. I want to welcome Cleo DeOrio today. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with us about your career, your creative process, and excuse my radio voice. It happens when cameras turn on. I just kind of evolve into that. It'll get more casual in a little bit. But why don't you introduce yourself, and we'll get going from there.
Well, my name is Cleo DeOrio. I am a director, choreographer, arts administrator. I've been working in theater and dance for the last almost 20 years. This is Alosa coming in to say hello.
Well, hello, Alosa. Lovely. Oh, my little one isn't gonna sneak in on us. She's a 3 or 4 year old black house panther.
She only comes in when she knows I'm speaking on camera. So she has a sense.
Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it.
So yes, director, choreographer, arts administrator. I've been working in theater and dance for the last 15 years professionally. I have a bachelor's degree in directing and choreography and a master's degree in physical ensemble-based theater. So I do a lot of theater, I do a lot of dance, and I also teach at Del Arte International as part of their faculty.
Very nice. Absolutely. I mean, this is quite a breadth of things that you cover. Let's start off a little bit younger. When you first started getting creative, what was your first creative exploration? Do you remember how old you were when you got into performing arts, the dance, everything? Let's start off right there.
Yeah. So my family, we're a family of artists. So my family, kind of gave us some really early exposure to performing arts that set me on the path that I am on today. I did my first community theater show when I was 5. I believe it was Babe the Sheep Pig or Charlotte's Web, something to do with pigs. Um, and so I've been doing it ever since. As a part of my upbringing in my little tiny hometown of Lima, Ohio, they have an accelerated arts program through their public school. And that allowed me to take music and dance and drama classes from first grade on. So it's always been a huge part of my education and my life.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. I appreciate you sharing that. What was it like to go from small town Ohio to coming out here? Because I know you're in California now. That's where I'm located. How was that kind of transition from the smaller town to just coming to the West Coast?
Yeah, it it was kind of a gradual process. So, like I said, I grew up in a smaller town. It's not tiny, but it's not, you know, not very big, not very bustly. Um, and then I moved to Cleveland, where I got my undergraduate degree at Baldwin Wallace University. So that was my first taste of like city life. Um, and it, suited me a lot more than my tiny upbringing. I then, straight from undergrad, moved to Humboldt County, California, where I got my master's degree at Del Arte International. And Del Arte is housed in Blue Lake, California, which is, known as part of the greater Humboldt County area. And that is smaller and more rural than anything I had ever experienced.
Oh, wow.
So, yes. So I kind of went from an industrial town to a bigger city to a tiny rural place. And now I'm in LA, which is obviously the biggest city I've ever lived in. But again, suits me and my career a lot more than the smaller industrial rural places.
Oh, that's absolutely great to hear. And can you remind me? I'm sure I just missed that. I was distracted by something for 2 seconds. Can you remind me when you went to this new rural town. What was what were you involved in theater wise? Group. What was the name of that organization?
Yeah. So that's where Del Arte International is.
That's where the Arte was. Okay,
That's where they
give
are.
me. I didn't want to mix that up.
Yeah, not a problem.
So
But but also while I was there, so there's a lot of theater there, right? So I don't want to make it sound like it's a small place and it doesn't have anything. It is a small place, but it has lots and lots of art. So I went there for Del Arte and got my master's there and started teaching as faculty there. But I also was the artistic director of Ferndale Repertory Theater, which is there, and incorporated a lot of other arts organizations that are there as well.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. So, by the time you have your master's, you're already working on being faculty. You're teaching. How did you approach that aspect when it came to teaching? What was your favorite topic to teach when you were there?
Mhm. Well, I still teach my favorite topics there. It's just not as regularly, right? So I went from being regular faculty teaching every week to now I am kind of guest faculty. I come and I teach the summer intensive. I teach modularly. One moment, gonna sneeze.
Oh, no problem. Gesundheit, salute, bless you.
It's okay. I'm allergic to her, and she's in my lap.
Oh no,
Yes, it's fine.
that's great. Good,
Oh,
gracious of her to still love you with that, and having having that knowledge.
yes, yes. Um, so let's see, talking about Del Arte. So then, after I got my master's degree there, I started teaching as part of the regular faculty, as I was saying, right? Um, and so now when I teach modularly, I basically teach my favorite things, which are, grand gesture, physical partnering, use of dynamic space. So, training an actor to use their body with different rhythm and tempo and weight, allowing for clearer and more dynamic character development and clearer nonverbal storytelling.
That is absolutely amazing because at the end of the day, visual storytelling, using your body, using another medium, that's what I believe most artists are storytellers. Deep down, no matter how you break it down, we can all be broken down to one simple element. We have a story to tell, and it's how we express it in whatever form that comes out. And I want to kind of talk about this dynamic movement and overall gesturing. It feels like it's heavily related to what I know as choreography. Again, my experience with dance is very minimal. I have family members in dance, and I'm wondering, how does it feel to try and direct people? How do you approach trying to translate what your idea of movement is to give them some idea of movement without, and at the same time, you're not trying to influence their expressive capabilities. You're just trying to show them how you can approach something. So how do you approach teaching them that? Because that's a very complex.
Yeah, it is. I find that myself as a teacher in a room like that, right? In a room where I'm trying to impart wisdom and also foster self-expression, that I, as the teacher, as the person creating the container, I have to do a lot of listening, right? And I think that as teachers, a lot of teachers, know that it's a give and take of giving information, giving coaching and listening to what's happening in the room. But I would say that in a room like that, I have to do a lot more listening than normal. Um, because I really have to be able to work with the student's body and what the student is giving and really be available to how I coach each moment differently, right? That one student may be really flexible physically and may be able to move in all of these dynamic ways, and another student might come into a room with something totally different, right? A student might come into the room with an injury. A student might come into the room with fear, right? And affect all of these things affect the body, and also affect the ability to express yourself, right? So I have to be able to work with whatever the student is and has at that moment.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I can relate completely as a college instructor, college professor. It's a matter of how much you absorb from your students versus as much as you put out, and listening to their needs and making sure you're meeting each one individually on their level. That's incredibly important, and I thank you so much for that insight and sharing that. Um, Kind of keeping along this same thread, I know you as somebody who loves dance. That's been my experience with you. What would you say your biggest inspiration between dance and theater would be? 'Cause it's equal. It's kind of a related I would say it's very much the related world. Again, my minimal knowledge coming into this. You're the expert. I wanna kind of figure out where was that first glimmer of inspiration? And if we can feed off of that and kinda just talk us into how that inspiration led you to the stage when it feels like to be on stage.
Hmm. Yeah. My first inspiration, at least my clearest directional inspiration, um, was when I was 8 years old. My parents took me to see Cirque du Soleil.
Oh, goodness, yes.
And I think we sat in the first or second row. And I just remember thinking, I can do that. And I want to do that. And so from there, it really took me down the path of physical storytelling, right? Because one of the kind of key aspects of Cirque du Soleil is that it is supposed to be for all audiences, right? There is no specific language that is used, in most of these shows because they want it to transcend, and it needs to be physical storytelling. It needs to be dynamic movement. It needs to be spectacle and, emotive and all of these things. And so a lot of my work, although it is not circus necessarily, does follow a similar kind of trajectory, that it is physical storytelling, it is dynamic, it should transcend language and be able to be understood in any country, in any culture. Um, and and so I think I hold on to some of those principles because that was my big impactful moment, right? That showed me that this is what theater can be, this is what art can be. Um, and I do believe, like you kind of said earlier, that theater, dance, circus, they're all siblings, right? They're all connected and related. And the difference is just style, right? So I consider dance to be a form of theater, right? It is a style of theater. When I think about telling a story, it I ask, right? How do I tell this story? What language do I tell this story? Do I tell this story in script form where we sit down and two people are having a conversation? Do I tell this story in dance form where the conversation is physicalized? Do I tell this story in, right, any different medium? Do I tell this story as a musical, right? That is all, they're all styles of theater. Dance also has its own life, right? Because dance doesn't have to tell a story. So dance can be movement for movement's sake. Dance can be an expression of a theme or a question. But there's a lot of different dynamics of theater that we see similarly, right? We can see absurdist theater. And absurdist theater is usually kind of focused on a theme rather than a story, right? You can see avant garde theater, which is art for art's sake. You can see performance art, right? Which again can have a theme, can be avant garde, can have all of these things, but is mostly for the art's sake, not for the storytelling, right? So all of these things play together and kind of, create the world of performance. Yeah. That all of them are connected. They all have their own, differences, but tapping into their connectiveness is kind of where I thrive.
Absolutely wonderful, and I have to say I'm sold on this environment. I'm very intrigued with what you're saying. This is more than I've had the privilege of exploring in my creative career. I'm truly in awe of how you can go from the stage to also being a director. This is something that you've discussed with me briefly. I'd be very interested in talking about what it's like to transition from maybe managing yourself on stage, performance, helping other teammates or crew members or castmates.
Mhm.
What is it like to transition from being on stage to now uh, creating the show or directing the show? And you'll have to help me clarify. Have you created your own shows at this point with others?
Yeah.
Have
So
you?
yeah. So that we call devising. So that devised theater, I've done many, many, many devised pieces throughout my career. And that is the creation of original work, right? So often I am devising with other people, right? It's not me by myself, although I have done that as well. But when you devise by yourself, you do then become kind of the author director, right? Not a deviser where you're working in community and you're creating something together that then finds its own life, right? So there are just some small differences there, but they do come from the same world, which is the generation of original art, right? So for me, as a performer, actor, creator versus a director, um, I think I carry a lot of the same principles into both roles, right? Which is what makes me a successful director is that I give my actors, my performers, a lot of agency, right? I want them to be able to bring their thoughts and their ideas into the room. And my job is only to shape the whole, right? To say, okay, this choice doesn't necessarily fit with this choice. And then work as a team to say, how can we make those two work together? Or do we have to make a different choice so that it is clear and so that the story is honored? I consider myself more of an outside eye, which is that I am seeing what's happening, right? I have the grandscape of things and also the detailed things. And so my job is to look at the whole and to look at the details to make sure that they honor the whole. As a performer, it's really you have to have a sense of the whole as well, but you're really living moment to moment. You want every moment to be authentic and alive and connected. And so you are also then relying on that outside eye to allow you to really focus on the inside, to focus on what's happening from partner to partner, to focus on the moment, the breath that's there, and trust that that outside eye, that director, that person has the whole, right? And that they will come to you with anything that needs to be changed or anything that doesn't make sense, um, or anything that, could be improved in any way.
That is completely understandable, and there's so many elements that cross over into other art disciplines just from the way you described that. It's
Mhm.
great to see how the different art realms are interconnected in this way. Whether it's working with a creative director or working with a head artist on a team
Mhm.
versus being on stage and trusting your cast members and your director to help guide the whole vision together. That's absolutely wonderful. Me, I'm often a solo act when it comes to creating whatever I create, whether it's interpretive art, illustrations, photography. And I often, when working with people, my direction is minimal, and I like them to explore their space and explore what they can do. And again, I know it's a different world talking about photography or cinema stuff, looking at it from the viewpoint of a creative director versus someone managing a stage presence. And I appreciate all those insights. And if I remember correctly, you mentioned that you are the Playhouse manager down in, I'm going to butcher the name. Hold on, let me get this right. I have it written down specifically for this reason. You're the Playhouse manager for the Mission Playhouse, correct?
Yeah. So technically, my title is Playhouse Supervisor, but yes, I manage the Playhouse. So I am the Playhouse Supervisor for the San Gabriel Mission Playhouse. Um, And that is kind of the arts administration role that I take on in a lot of ways. Um, it is, it's connected to my skills in directing. It's also connected to my skills in teaching. It's definitely, um, it's definitely a position that requires a lot of organization and a lot of communication and knowing, knowing a theater, knowing how a theater works, and helping other people, right? Other organizations, other producing companies, come in and do their shows well.
Oh, absolutely. Wonderful. Wonderful. And I do have to ask, you still get to create quite often with what you want to create. I know you've been a part of a few shows recently. Is there a show that you've been a part of recently that stood out and you just uh, kind of are in awe that you got to be in that experience?
So, since moving to LA and since becoming the playhouse supervisor, I haven't necessarily gotten to produce as much as I usually do or would like to. My last project was the Macabre Cabaret at Delarte International, and I definitely think that it was a fantastic show. It was one of the best cabarets I've ever directed, and I direct a lot of cabarets. Um, and I think that I don't know that I have many projects that I would say awe me, right? But that's also because this is what I do, and this is my normal part of my life. Um, and there are always moments that awe me, but that those moments are what bring joy in every production. So this production, I would say it was really successful. It was really fun. The cast was fantastic. The talent was fantastic. Um, and what would awe me about this show is um, that it's always so inspiring to see people come together and throw something together that is quality and is worth seeing and worth investing your time into. And seeing the audiences enjoy that and be lifted by it.
Oh, that's absolutely terrific. And I'm sure it's a humbling experience to hear applause on any performance. I feel that kind of experience just somebody even notices my work. And I'm not going to lie, I used to have a massive ego when I was in my 20s. And it was not necessarily that, oh, I'm going to be famous kind of ego. It was, look at what I can do, look what I could make. And I didn't have this understanding early on how big of an achievement it is to just be able to make the thing I was able to make. And that relates right into that moment you're talking about. You're like, wow, this is going so smoothly. I feel the flow. I feel the energy of the crowd. I feel the energy on stage. And you get that pure moment of performance creation kind of culminating. And I like to relate to that now. And I like to feel humbled whenever that actually, I don't like to, it just happens. I feel humbled when that moment comes, when I'm looking at the creation come to life and somebody else gets to appreciate it, no matter how big the crowd is. And I really appreciate you sharing that feeling. And that relates to what I was asking earlier. What does it feel like to be on stage? And I think you put it very eloquently here. It's what you do for a living. It's what you do. It's not a matter of, oh, this level of adrenaline. Yes, that's probably there for certain performances, but it's it's you. It's part of your life. This isn't a separate thing where you prepared and it's a once in a lifetime event. This is day in, day out, you're feeling that creativity. And I love hearing that kind of description. And I'm glad that there's still moments where you feel that connection and exhilaration with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know what my life would be without it, really.
I I'm glad to hear that because I think most creatives I've talked to have this same feeling of I don't know what I would do if I'm not doing this or if I didn't have this. And I'm gonna dive us way back into your childhood again. Do you feel growing up, and if this is too personal, please let me know. I feel that I was very supported as a child who loved the arts, loved to create things. Do you feel you had that support there as well when you were growing up, or do you feel it gradually came about as you were exploring it through school and through external means. Uh, I don't know. Again, I feel that might be too personal, but please let me know if I've overstepped.
Yeah, I think that I was supported. I think that I was supported in the art. I mean, my parents, like I said, they're artists. They are big supporters of the arts, and so it was kind of a no-brainer for my family, right, to support my art. Um, I mean, I was in every choir that ever existed in Lima, Ohio, and I was in all of the orchestras, and I, danced 3 to 4 times a week, and, so it was the only thing my life was, right? And my parents' support in that, my family's support in that was always evident because they were always at my performances. They were the ones driving me to all these rehearsals. Um, they were very much a present part of all of that.
That's absolutely terrific. I'm glad to hear that. I feel grateful when I hear those statements. There's so many people I've met who are one side of the there's no middle ground of it just kind of happened. It's either I had no support and I went out on my own and it's where I ended up, or I had full support and it's where I ended up. It's great to see that you had that, and I appreciate you sharing this. Um, this is going to be an interesting question. I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but with directing, how does it feel to approach this like on a step-by-step basis? Because I'm very interested in talking about your creative process. And with directing, again, my style is completely different from most people. How do you get yourself into that headspace to be ready to just take it one piece at a time? Is there a way you can break that down for us?
Um, yeah, I think that the I'm just reflecting on it right now as you're asking. And as I think about the way that I enter a room, is I always start by saying, "Show me what you've got." Right? I never come in with, "Okay, this is what we're doing. This is what's happening." Right? And when I'm directing like a show or a musical, like a play, I have a schedule, right? Like, "Okay, we're doing scene 3 today." But it's always, "Okay, we're doing scene 3. Show me what you got." Right? What are you bringing into the room? What are you bringing to the table? And what I do, my whole job is to respond, right? My whole job is to see what's going on and respond to that, and to allow it to elevate and heighten whatever is going on in that moment.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I appreciate you sharing that. Now, this is going to be kind of a loaded question. I
Yeah.
often get this from my own students at college or whatever workshops I'm running. Uh, how do you feel about your career currently, the creative end of your career, and where do you hope to see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah. Currently, my career is still careering, right?
Mhm.
It's still going.
Yeah.
I have found myself with the Mission Playhouse, I found myself in a far more administrative role than I enjoy. And I've been trying to find balance in how I take, gigs and jobs that are direction and are choreography and are teaching, which is what I thrive in, and also maintain this administrative role that, they really need me in. So, I I would hope that in 5 years, I am able to be in an administrative role that allows me to have creative space, or to transition into teaching full time, where I get to work with students and pass on my own passion.
Wonderful, wonderful. I appreciate that very much. Y one more question. This one's a little bit out there. I was thrown a loop for this question myself. This one came from a colleague, and this one we'll end everything that we're discussing on kind of a fun note. If
Okay.
you if you had to choose another art form to be involved in? Something creative, something that you've kind of always admired, but maybe you know nothing about. What would you choose to play around with? And if you can't think of anything, is there another art form that you have tried to explore in the past or currently? And as an example, for me, I animate, I draw, and I do photography. Those are my primaries. But anytime it comes to painting, and I mean specifically painting, I'm in awe of what people can pull off with oils or acrylics. And I do paint, but it is not my strongest medium in my own opinion. But I'm trying to dabble in that a little bit more. Or it's music for me as well. I'm currently trying to learn the guitar and the banjo. And with these stubby little fingers, it's very challenging. It's a different world entirely than music is a great art form. It's a different world than I understand. So with that example, maybe that can help answer your end of the question.
Yeah. I I feel personally like I am such a multidisciplinary artist already that I have a hard time saying, "Oh, what other art form would I want to do?" Right? I am a theater artist. I am a dancer. I am a musician, right? So the first thing that came to mind was photography. That, maybe I would try to photograph things. I think that a part of my directorial vision and eye is that I see things, right? I see it, I get it, I know what we're trying to go for. So, what I don't have the skill in is capturing that via camera, via all of these different types of cameras, all of these different types of equipments. So, if I were to try to do something else, maybe I would learn that.
That is wonderful to hear. If you ever need help with that, let me know. I've got about 200 cameras I can borrow sitting behind me on a shelf. Yeah, so that's wonderful to hear. I really appreciate it. And I don't want to take up too much more of your time. You've been very gracious to talk with us, and thank you so much. And maybe if we can find some kind of footage, because this thing's going to go up on podcast/YouTube, maybe if we can have you share some footage of one of your performances that you would like, we could, cut that into this video and put that in, if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, yeah, I'll find some footage and send it your way.
Absolutely. I appreciate it so much. I look forward to the next time we get to work together and discuss art and all that great stuff. I hope that you have a great day, and thank you for sitting down with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. You take care.
You too. Bye bye.